Hey everybody, welcome to the March 18th Tinderbox Meetup. Typical format, we go around the room and new people introduce themselves and everyone is welcome. Then we dig into any topics or projects that people are working on or any other arcane stuff that we want to discuss, particularly if there's an agenda in place, which today there is not. So let's go a little bit free form and we have no one new. So what projects are you all working on and what would you like to talk about today? Thoughts, ideas? Who's working on what? Don't all go jump out all at once.
I've been playing around with there's a guy on the actually Fidel, who I don't think is here today, kindly contributed something where he'd been playing around with he's starting down the line of doing a memory palace, but was also playing around with the notion of simple flip cards. And I wasted a couple of hours trying to take it to the next level where effectively I have an agent or a note or something that finds a note and does his flip card motif. Basically, find a random child of the flip card stack and do his process. The problem comes that is trying to control the various updates. If you do it in an agent and try and just get one note, you have the problem of trying to turn the agent off while you're trying to use it and turn it on to refresh it once, which turns out to, I think, be impossible at the moment. So you could pick the random child of the agent, which is the avenue I'm going down at the moment. The next problem is trying to signal to the agent when you want it to update. Because, you know, from the user's perspective, big sigh, I just want it to work. It's obvious. Well, it turns out, of course, the signal isn't obvious, because an interesting aspect of edicts, which I was using to stop sort of pressure on the system, is that, a rule runs all the time, but an edict runs not only at document start and once an hour thereafter, but it also runs if you alter any of the displayed attributes, and I think possibly the text as well as the note, on the sensible assumption that the displayed attributes are the ones you're interested in. So if you change them, it's very possible that you want the edict to catch the fact you've done that. So an interesting signaling problem. When I get there, I'll see if I can put the result in the forum.
Couldn't you just do a Boolean and the agent runs, presents the card, and doesn't run again until the agent doesn't look for that Boolean? And
no, because the agent running is controlled by agent priority, which has a number of settings, but there isn't a sort of run once and wait notion. And the problem is that if you try and change the agent priority, you normally need to change the controlling Boolean at the same time, and basically the two run in the same loop in the same moment, and so the Boolean doesn't work as you want. So I think the answer, if one was to go down that thing, would be kind of cool if there was a run once and wait. As ever, automation needs something we don't currently have. You know, it's like there isn't a wait notation in Action Code, and why would there be? Because it's not a formal programming language; it's some overgrown scripting, and so I wouldn't expect it to be there. But I'm sure that if I prod it hard enough, we'll find a way.
So do you want to do a demo of share the demo of the process at all?
Well, I can show. Yeah, I mean, this is in essence. Bear with me a second. That's the right button would help. There we go. Share. That's what we want. Right. So with a bit of change by me. So actually, let me turn this off because that's sort of giving the answers away. So I want to go to here. So in the way that Fidel so Fidel's original notion was that, in fact, he was using a rule. So his mind palace idea is you get a prompt, which is the name of the note, and when you press the flip button, it basically shows you the answer. So so although his document is heading in the direction of making a mind palace for remembering stuff, what he also wanted to do was this thing like you do in things like Anki of having flashcard for repetition testing. And it's quite neat the way we've done it. Turn it off, we hide it again, show it. And one of the things I did was in his original method, he had a rule for this, which I moved to an edict because you don't need the rule running all the time. And in fact, what I'd gone further to do was to this is what I'm experimenting with at the moment, is effectively to have the answer text in an attribute, because then it's easier to call it. You don't, if it's stored as a literal string in an edict, it's not very tractable. Whereas if I wanted to work through a find or an agent or something, I can go and say, okay, well, give me the answer text for prompt note such and such by using the appropriate offset reference. I've sort of got things running at the moment, except it's a bit like a runaway freight train at the moment. So I've changed this edict update prompt. I've changed this attribute, which is now causing the edict to keep running. And now it's stopped for a bit. So I don't understand the background process enough yet to know. But essentially what I'm trying to do is to get an agent that's collecting all the prompts that are available. And of course there may be hundreds. So we need to think about sort of throttling and scope and all that sort of thing. So that gives me all of those. Then I say in the edict, it could be the rule for the note, but I think that's overkill. In the edict for the note, we say, okay, get me, the first bit is get me a random child. So that's great. So I'm going to get a random selection of these, and that's fine. And I can go and find the appropriate, I can go and find the prompt name is there, the answer text holds the answer. And if I wanted to use these other bits here, and of course I can write those for the selected note in. And so the fact that you're not seeing the flip come on here is because basically the signaling process is too aggressive. So in essence, what we want to do, ideally what we like is for our agent to choose one of its children, put that information into the agent, do our flashcard bit, and then use another Boolean and say, right, give me another one. And that's the logic I'm struggling with at the moment, but I suspect it's doable. And that's quite a neat way of doing flashcards. It's not sexy. You could get terribly carried away and do it in the preview pane, but I think what I'm learning is making it look neat, unless someone's paying you lots of money, to show it to lots of people on a big screen, is wasted effort. If you're doing it for yourself, your eye is quite capable of ignoring the stuff you don't need to see on screen and can do that. And the rest of it is how much spare time you have to deal with things. Any questions? Have I stunned everyone to silence, or are there no questions?
Yes.
But you could. So the reason I was a few minutes late was I thought, right, I'll just do this before this afternoon's meetup, and no, I didn't. But I think, I've given you an adumbration of what might occur here. And it's
the limitations in interactivity with programmable interactivity with Tinderbox, because I've often thought that I could recreate the classic Star Trek game using the map view and action code, but there's not a lot of give and take on the input and then present the results and get new input. So. No,
indeed. And it's interesting because in this case, the thing's being actually too grabby and moving too fast. Normally, because I know a while back, somebody wanted me to do a sort of process flow diagram with dynamic updating, basically using the links to signal through a map. And it turns out it just wasn't responsive enough, which was not so much to do with any particular flaw in Tinderbox or Action Code, but the fact that we have a flash to bang time for humans. If it hasn't changed in a very few milliseconds, we basically assume it hasn't worked. If we're expecting a change, it doesn't happen. And Tinderbox was never designed for this sort of interactivity. It's not to say it couldn't be done, but this is the constant problem with sort of people arriving with an expectation because they did something else. Say, why can't I do this thing in a tool that was designed in a completely different way for a completely different purpose? Why can't I just do that using this? I mean, it's interesting. It was really interesting. Someone, I thought, a perfectly reasonable thing to say, why can't I have more badges? Well, I mean, you could, but you have to understand that the map icon is designed to have a space for a badge so that it knows where to put the text and stuff. Because if you have hundreds of notes and you want them all to move around and you want them to be responsive to all the other things you do, that's a lot of back of house stuff that, of course, we don't worry about, but which I know has the developer tearing his hair out every time someone says just. Well, I'll stop sharing if there are no more questions. You're muted, Michael.
So how about the hook stuff? Nobody has anybody else. How about the hook stuff? You want to demonstrate that?
Well, I haven't really got it working. I mean, that's been an interesting saga going on as well, because it's been a comedy of errors, none of them intentional, where somebody tried something, didn't get the result they wanted, misdiagnosed the problem, and then was given a helpful answer to solve the wrong problem. So the issue was, if you use the Tinderbox URL as it is at the moment, well, here's the thing. If you use the file menu, get note URL, it includes the path to where you are, and indeed the full selection. So if you have 10 notes selected, you get 10 IDs in the URL. If you look at $note URL, you actually get just the document and the ID of the note, which is more tractable. So, because the original problem that it was Tom had brought up is that if you have a note using a URL with a path in it and you move that note in the document, Tinderbox opens up the document, so not there. So the interesting challenge at this point, rather than trying to hammer the problem into the ground at the moment, to say, well, what should happen? I mean, my suggestion has been that perhaps what Tinderbox should do is, when it gets a URL, a Tinderbox URL with an ID that's valid for the document, but not valid in the location it's being given, so that's at the path it's being given with the view type it's being given, then it just shows you a root level outline with the note selected. This causes some people to get very upset because they can't see the note that's selected, and so may tend to assume that something has gone wrong rather than just expose the thing. But at the same time, there isn't a mechanism, an easy mechanism, and I may be wrong here, but I don't think there is a mechanism that basically allows you to sort of select the thing in the text window and say, just make this visible in the current view. It's harder if you're using a map, because you might have to shift map context. In an outline, it might be as little as just expanding a particular branch. So there's no fault all round, but I think there's a little bit of work to be done. And the other thing that might have confused people who've been watching that thread was the issue over ID versus note ID string. What that's all about is there are a few edge cases where, because the ID at the moment is a 10-digit number, it may arrive at a case where the application says, you're trying to do something to a number, right, I shall give you back twice the ID. multiplying it, giving you a completely different ID, which is not what you wanted, but it knows no better. So the idea is that actually a string might be more helpful. It then turns up that the hash process that's used to make the string will produce hashes including a / and a plus sign, because who cares? It's just a string. Except if you put those into a URL, like if you're passing it to Hook, that's not helpful, because those have a special meaning inside a URL. The other parts of that thread that's been going on is actually to understand quite what Hook wants, and it's a bit chicken egg. There's no fault here. Hook is wonderful and eloquent, and one of the things I think that it tries to do, or that the original script that I think David True produced for Hook and Tinderbox, is to get the URL, or a functional URL within Tinderbox, i.e. the note or notes that you want at the location, at the scope within the document in the view type that you want, and have the common sense to get an alias to the document that it's in, because the Tinderbox URL just gives you the alias, just gives you the name of the document. Now, the document might not be open, and the document might not be where Tinderbox thought it was when it last used it. So it does make a lot of sense that Hook, thinking, what is my role in this? Is okay, so what I need to know is the user wants to know where this file is, because if they want to open that document again, they actually want to open it, not be told it is not where you think it is. So, and that's something that I only realized sort of late in the process. But again, because no one had documented what it was trying to do, it's rather hard to fix a process that hasn't been described. But to AppleScript, which is the glue that's being used by Hook when you're working from the Hook end of things, I can see that it's perfectly possible, certainly, to get an alias to the document, and probably for now to get as it were, a safer Tinderbox URL that at least gives you something, even if it's not quite where you wanted in the document and not quite in the view that you chose. Because I think until there are some changes in and clarity as to what a Tinderbox URL is and represents, it's anybody's guess what happens at the far end. So today, the safest thing I think is to just basically take a root level Tinderbox URL and an ID or list of IDs, and at least Hook will find, it would, depending on which script you use, but it should find and open the document. The script I last played with had a problem in that I think it was doing it in the wrong order. It was opening Tinderbox. It was said, I don't know what this document is. Then you click OK and it would open the document. So actually what it really wants to do is tell Tinderbox, go open this document, and then say, give me this URL. So I think there's a signaling error there as well. But I don't know how to fix that, because there's no documentation I can find in Hook as to how it works. But I'm sure that Luke and his team. I mean, again, I'm not casting aspersions here. I'm sure it's just a matter of someone with the time and interest to go and talk to Luke and his team to understand, quite what inputs need to be made on within Hook in terms of the AppleScript. Sorry, Michael.
Well, I'm just saying though, and I think the part of the challenge too is consistently documenting what the problem is. So I believe the problem, just to be very clear, is when you hook a Tinderbox note, if you move that note, the Hook link can't get back to it. That's the issue. And the problem is I've not been able to reliably make that happen. Sometimes it doesn't go back to it, sometimes it does. And I think that's the issue. And maybe I can demonstrate it just for those people that may not be familiar with Hook.
Sure, and it's such an elegant tool. It's a really nice idea, and I think it's probably just a matter, as often happens in this interact communication, of just checking what needs an adjustment at one end or the other end or both. Right. And it's something that we're probably butting up at the moment against what an individual user can fix by fiddling around with the AppleScript that's involved.
So, and again, I think and Dave, I'll get your question in just a second. I think there's so, this is the app Hook, and what Hook actually does is it's a universal linking tool. And essentially what it, in talking with Luke, the goal and objective of here is to make it, the dream is every object on your computer can be linked to every other object as long as those in the sandbox are willing to play with each other. In other words, if the application or an application will disclose its the linking paths for objects within that application, then you'll be able to link things around. And it's actually quite elegant. So, and that works for anything across your computer. So let's say I have a, I've got some files here on my computer, and up in the top on Hook, up in your menu bar up here, you can see you've got a little Hook menu that I can run. And so and then you have Hook hotkey. So I'm going to go ahead and run that just so if I click that little menu bar that I just showed you, this menu element will pop up, and you can create a Hook link or a Hook markdown link. You can also generate hotkeys for that, so that in here, if you're looking at the Hook shortcuts, you can generate hot shortcuts for you on your app. And here is the scripts, the Apple scripts that Mark Anderson was just talking about. So let's demonstrate this real quick. So if I'm here, and I'll do the menu, and I'll do the menu version of it so you can see it. I'll click that, and I'll say, okay, I want to link to, actually, I want to link to that PDF. So I'm going to click this, and I want to link to this PDF. So I'm going to copy the Hook. So by copying that, now I can go back to Tinderbox and say, if I'm in a note, and now paste that link. And so now I've got a clickable link there. And if I click that, it will go and dutifully open up the file that I just clicked to. So you're able to in your notes link to that. Now, likewise, if I go back here and I were to go here, and obviously hotkeys are easier, but I hate to say markdown given our conversation last week, but dare I say markdown? I'll copy a markdown link, and I'll paste that in. And so now I've got a markdown link as well. And as we recall, the way to do markdown links is you have the bracket, you give the name that you want for the link up into the closed bracket, and then you put the little parentheses there around there to make that link. And so now I've got a markdown. So there's the name of the link, and then here is the actual link itself going to that path on the hard drive. So that's how it's often used. And you could populate these links and these notes into attributes, and you could do really fun stuff. So for instance, let's say I go here and I type in URL, and I go back to this file, and I go to Hook. Sorry. And something wants to crash. My Finder wants to crash. That's a new one. All right, let me relaunch Finder real quick. All right. Okay, so now if I go here, come on. Sorry, my Finder is acting up. Let me close that window and reopen it. This is bizarre. Huh. Okay, let me stop sharing real quick and come back. My Finder is acting up really weird. Okay, there we go. All right. So let's say I do this. Now let me reshare my screen. So if I'm doing Hook, I go click the little hook link. Come on. Oh my God. All right, I am having some Finder issues big time. Let me relaunch Finder. I'll just do it with hotkeys and then I'll finish it. Okay. Now let's try this again. Okay.
You're not sharing.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to get it done. All right. So let's say now you saw the Finder window before, so I'm just going to hit my hotkeys now. So I can go ahead. What is going? That is the weirdest thing. I may have to restart my computer. Let's see. All right. All right. One more Let me try it once more. I wonder what I've got running that is eating up.
Is it just something running in the background that's decided to eat lots of memory, so everything's running slow?
That's what I just, yeah, that's what I was just saying. I don't know. What am I?
Or is Hook entered AppleScript Hook entered AppleScript into a race condition that it keeps trying to link back to?
No, it's my Chrome browsers are running at 100 gazillion %. Let me force quick.
All your resources belong to us. Yeah.
Let me force quick Chrome and see if that helps. That's the beautiful thing of iStat menu. All right, so that should do the trick. Let me go back to that file that we were playing with. Okay. Got it. Here, yep. Okay, got it. So it was Chrome taking over all of my resources. So if I go here then, so I can easily go ahead and, copy that link like this, copy link. And so then if I were up here and I wanted to create an attribute for that, I could type that in as a hook link URL. So that way, if I click on this, that would actually open up the file too. So there's nice ways to do this. Now, one of the things that I didn't know until this week about Hook, which is really cool, is if I go and copy that URL, and so I'm just hitting my control copy to copy that URL. And let's say now I want to go to this note, and if I then actually hit copy, the control paste, and then if I open up the Hook menu, you'll see that I can now pop up a different menu in Hook, and it's going to tell me that I've linked this note to these two files on my computer. And that's actually something that's actually quite cool. So if you don't want to be embedding the notes into an attribute or into your text, you can actually hook from the menu perspective. So like you're seeing here, this note is not currently linked to anything. If I go back to my hard drive, copy that note, and then go here and then paste that note, you'll now see that this note is now linked to that file, to which I now can click on and open. So it kind of creates a really interesting kind of universal linking methodology. And where I found this to be particularly interesting is with like, let me see one like, and then here's an example of like email. So here's an email. I'm going to hook this email, come here and paste it. And now, now you see I've got my Miami trip email hooked. And so now if I open that up, that will open up. So you can, so not every application in your Mac OS will support this kind of linking, but, mail, calendaring apps, other kind, Skim and other types of PDF readers. And what was particularly interesting, and actually let me do one more demo on this, which was particularly interesting is Luke and this is what particularly got Tom Diaz super excited. And his excitement got me interested in looking at it, is that it's now hooked to, he's now done the integration with Kindle. So let's say I'm in here and I highlight this text and I go like that. And then if I hook that text, I can bring it back to here and paste that text. And now I've got a link to that quote in Kindle. And likewise, I could go ahead and paste that quote there. So this is actually, so I could go like this from a note-taking perspective. I could copy this quote, go here, say blah, blah, blah. Actually, what I'll do is this. I'll use Text Sniper, because sometimes Kindle doesn't let you do stuff. So I'll text sniper that. So now I can get the text. So there's my text. And then I could have the citation to that, link to that text, like something like this. Right. So now I've got my quote plus the direct link to that Kindle file. So, and again, you know the mechanics. There's any number of different ways that you might want to do that. But, I think this is pretty interesting. Thoughts, comments, questions? All right, Dave, your hand's been up for a while.
Yeah, let me lower it.
Oh,
I have
one last question about the one thing I didn't demonstrate, by the way, too, is likewise, you can do this between Tinderbox notes. So here's a Tinderbox file that says test. I could go here and paste that there. And now I've got that test note linked to this file. And so that way I can actually link back and forth between Tinderbox files too. All right, sorry, Dave, did you have the question?
Yeah, and Mark, I looked at ATB Ref this morning. In the info box, let me switch over so I can see. In the inspector on the export section, I want to be able to use an asterisk at the beginning of a line, but it turns into a bullet. So on the unordered thing on list markup, if I just delete UL and un-UL, will it just leave my asterisk?
It depends whether you got quick lists turned on. When I'm not
Where are you?
when I'm not speaking, I'll go away but basically, so this sort of predates the sort of current notion of the preview as a kind of presentation thing. So it used to be basically way back when, and bearing in mind that one of Tinderbox's original sort of predicated ideas was as a blogging tool, that if you started a line with an asterisk, you were basically creating an item in a bulleted list. If you started it with a hash or pound sign, you were doing a numbered item in a list. And that still holds true. If you write, and if you use a sort of like a rich text bullet, that too will be treated as if it was a list item with Tinderbox's sort of default processing. There's a sort of problem here because we're probably getting to the threshold where what used to be the marvel that it could produce a list. Now we're sort of thinking, no, I probably want more control. And indeed, there are instances where people are saying, I actually want to be able to control the HTML that's written for a link from text, i.e. what we call a sort of text link in Tinderbox. That's not there sort of yet, and because the use case I think needs some working through. But I think you can turn off. I know. Is the issue you just want a line that starts with an asterisk?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Failing that,
right. I can't remember what the code is, but if you put ampersand something, it's not 32. Because actually, if you were to look at the source of Tinderbox and some of the documents, that's exactly what I do. I can't remember why, but if I don't want an asterisk to be misparsed at the Tinderbox end as me trying to indicate I want a list item, if you use the HTML entity notation, which is normally an ampersand and then a number and a semicolon, but that is a
non-printing character or something that just tells Tinderbox that this isn't the first asterisk in the line.
Bullet or the same for asterisk. But if it was a bullet, no, what you would type, you'd type. So it's ampersand hash and then whatever the ASCII number for the character is normally. I think that was an ASCII. That's probably a Unicode.
Oh, to get the actual asterisk.
Yeah. For an asterisk, it's going to be a different number, but
So
there you go.
I figured I could trick it if I just put like a non-printing character of some kind before.
And you could probably make a stamp or a text expander or whatever such thing you may use to do that. I mean, it's a kludge, I know, but in the same way that as those who've tried to document export code will know, if you want to write about export code, you have to put 2 characters instead of 1. Otherwise, export code, and evaluates it, which wasn't what you meant to do. So it's one of those things. But I think you can turn off quick lists. What I don't know without refreshing my memory is whether you can turn off quick lists without turning off the classic thing is you turn off that, but then you turn off lots of other stuff that you did want. So right. I'll check.
Right, and so the question was, if you just in the document inspector in the HTML export tab of the inspector, they list those codes for the unordered list. list.
That's fixing it a different way, and that will only bite you on the day that you did want to export a list. So in essence, if you've got a line that starts with an asterisk and you don't want it to be treated as a list during preview or export,
how can I escape?
I would HTML identify the asterisk, and that will say to Tinderbox, hands off. This is literally an asterisk. This is not me trying to tell you to make a list.
Okay,
if you fiddle with the other, you'll break your list export.
That's a macro. I mean, not a macro, a text expander thing. Which
Essentially what you're doing is it's a bit like using a backslash to escape a literal character in a regex. You're just saying, in this context, I actually mean this, and not what you thought I meant.
And then so the other thing I was playing with when I was reading ATB ref was I've never used the macro tab. Michael, click on that macro tab. And I really don't understand what they are. I mean, apparently you can make a list.
This sort of goes, this made more sense when we didn't have things like action code, it has to be said. But the idea is that you could write a macro that you like, and so they basically it used to be a caret, but there is a similar one actually. You can use an action code too, but it says do. The first argument is the name of the macro. Think of it like the name of a stamp. And then basically as many extra bits as you need, but then argument number 2 becomes $1 in your macro code. So a classic use for it way back. And in fact, if you look at the Tinderbox file of ATB ref, there's one in there, which is that if you wanted to do, say, an inline image in your note, that you could just say do image. It might be sort of do image, which is telling you use the image, the macro named image, and you might say, the first one is the width, the next one is the height, the next one is one would be the file name or the path to the file name. One will be maybe the HTML height, the HTML width. So in other words, when that's run out, when that note is exported, Tinderbox says, oh, I see what you want to do here. What you want to do is you want to put an image tag, and you want me to use the file name argument as the SRC attribute value. You want me to use, the third argument as the number for the width HTML argument, the next one for the height argument, alt text, all those sort of things. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense abstractly. I think I need to see an example.
I'll show you one. I'll show. Let me. If I can share for a second, I will. Hold on. Where are we? It would help. I go to.
It sounds like a simple way to include little graphics that are just sort of decorative that you don't want to necessarily have to do all the HTML for every time.
So I don't know if it's rather small, but basically if I was to call the macro
I don't think
IMG
we're not seeing
tag,
your screen.
Not sharing.
Sorry?
Your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep pressing the leave meeting button. Right. Hold on a second. Is that better? Now you seeing this guy here?
Right.
Okay. So here's one I baked earlier. So I don't actually use it, but it was partly when I was experimenting what you do with macros. And this basically makes, if I was to type, just for a second, doesn't matter. I'll clean it. If I was to put do what's it called? So image I first tag. Of all say image tag, and then what's the next one? So one is the name of. So the next one is pic.jpg, or it might be a full path, but you get the point. So I'm looking and saying $1 is going into SRC. The next one is the width, which is 320, so 320, and it's a number, so we don't need to quote it. The next one is the height, which is 50. The next one is the title. Then, oh, so we got it. The next one is 5 is the ID, so that will be, because it has to start with a letter, but we're going to give it an ID. So if you looked at the HTML when it's generated, actually we should be able to do this. We'll see if this works. Oh, class. So the last one is so let's say we've got a CSS class called Pickbox. Now, if I go to export here, what I should see, where is the... So here we go. It's this bit here. So you now see it's basically, it's inserted into the text of the note, a well-formed HTML tag, well, because I bothered to make it one. In fact, these days you probably put a closing slash at the end because it's a self-closing tag. So we've got a valid, so we have a value for the picture. We've said its height, its width. We've set some alternative text, which I'm using twice over because this was back in the days of, Internet Explorer versus the rest of the world. It's got an ID number because we decided we want an ID, and we've got a CSS class to help with starting it. The other reason you might have an ID is you might particularly want to apply CSS to the ID. So sometimes you give things an ID not because they have any semantic meaning beyond just being used as a styling anchor, because CSS can style either by entity type, by class name, or by ID. And that's probably an example of what you might do. And I know back in the day, I think Mark Benson used to do it for dropping in. If you were doing something like a signature block, or you were doing something like, you maybe had a sort of block of code where whenever you referenced a book, you maybe pulled in some information from elsewhere, put that in. That said, probably more sensibly these days, if you're doing something like some book information and that information is stored elsewhere, you'd actually use an include command with a template, and then you'd say, include notebook X, and then a template. And what the template would do would give you the HTML that you wanted using information stored in the note about book X, but it just pulls it by inclusion or transclusion, if you will, into the note that's then exported.
What appeals to me potentially is, if you're familiar with Dave Weiner's blog, he often includes little graphics of a Campbell soup can or Moe of Larry Cohen, Moe and Curly. So you could have that graphic on your website and have this little macro and just include Moe or something. And in your blog post, and in that particular blog post, Moe would appear or whatever. I'm not clear on the conditional if. If there's a width, I mean, if.
Okay, sorry. That was simply that. So that the reason, although I'm getting a bit fancy there, and again, this is really so to teach myself how it all worked. What I was doing is I was doing a nested thing. I'm basically saying, right, give me. So reading from the left, which it might probably a bit bigger if I just paste it into here for a second. So I'm saying, right, well, put input number 1, which is actually the second argument as written. So in fact, so that's $1. So sort of $0 is the name of the name of the macro. Argument number 2 is actually $1. So basically, picture JPEG goes there. And I'm saying, if you have an input number 2, use it as the width. If you have an input number 3, use it as the height. But the other thing is, you have to, if you're going to say define, if the macro defines 6 arguments, you have to give it enough empty. Even if I don't have a height and width, I have to put a sort of, in a sense, an empty space between nothing between a comma, because the comma is what the macro parser uses to say, oh right, I've got, yes, I wanted 6 arguments, I've got 6 arguments, there's no argument number 3 or number 4, which means that $2 and $3 aren't populated. So when I go to here and I say, well, if you've got a $2, put it into width, but also because that is an that's an if statement. If there's no $2, none of that gets written. So not only does it not write a width into the width attribute, it doesn't write a width attribute into the output HTML. Because otherwise potentially you're saying to the browser, display this at width nothing, which probably wasn't what you wanted. But I would say that I think going to your point about, Dave Weiner saying about importing something, I think the way you'd probably do it now is something like this. You'd have a note. Your picture of Mo might be, you might have a note that explains, rather in the manner that Michael uses. So rather than the picture being in the note Mo would say where the image is. And then you'd have a template. So T picture is just something, plucked out of the ether. And so what you're saying is, at this position in this note, I want you to go away and using the template T picture and information from the note Mo, I want you to give whatever T picture returns. And T picture might be a nice little sort of, little formatted box with the picture and maybe some information about it beneath. Does that make sense?
And why is that superior? Why would that be superior to the?
I don't think it's superior. I'm not. I mean, I suppose the easy way to answer is I'm not sure it's a useful comparison to draw. I think it's just that where things are now, and for the likely sort of thing you might want to do, I think you've got more flexibility going the include route. Because, for instance, things like, if I recall, things like, all these bits, nearly all this stuff on any page of ATBRef are a series of includes. So at the bottom it said, right, go get the quick links. Now go get the donate thing. Now go get the license conditions. Now go get the actual footer. And it just means that it helps make the code more modular, and it makes it easier to reuse, because now, as it happens, over time, I've managed to hone it. So most pages in ATBRef, about 99% of them use just one template. But a classic exception, for instance, is, I happen to have one open here. So this is about an attribute. This section of the page is an include. And basically, the main template said, if the note that I'm processing is about an attribute, go fill in this, go fetch me an include template for this note with some extra information, which is what you see in that table. And that means that I don't have to put, if I put all the code for all these things in one template, it would also get unfeasibly long. And your eyes begin to bleed a bit. And so it seems complex to start with. Once you get your head around it, it's actually, it's nice because, for instance, if I wanted to reuse that table somewhere else, this one's a bad example because obviously it only applies to an attribute. But if I had something that was some kind of sort of like a summary block about something, I could reuse that wherever I want. You could use a macro. You could use a macro to do it, but I think probably now the export process and the export and action code has progressed since these features were built. You probably find it easier to just use an include rather than a do macro. But they're all possibilities, and there is no one right way. Right.
Well, I will say that in my contemplated use case is that it would be just occasionally on particular notes, and that I would create a series. I would create there would be a number of images, and the macro would just point with one of the arguments to the image that I was interested in, and then it isn't something that would have to appear on every page, or so it would be like a glossary, I guess, of goofy. But okay, well, that explains that, and I think I have the idea of what I got to do to make asterisks appear at the beginning of a line, kind of like a footnote. But
sure,
right, there was nothing else. I figured I'd belabor the simple HTML.
No, that's super. And when I'm not speaking, I'll go put a thing in the chat log just for you, pointing to at least the bit where the sort of quick links are happening, and you can work out from there. Because another thing going back was it used to be that, well, it still is the case that if, for instance, if you put if you have a line of text that is more than X points larger in point size than the rest of the text, it'll say, oh, right, you're making an H2 or you're making an H1 or something. It's not something that sort of many people use because you might, if you wanted to do that sort of thing in line, probably you might be the sort of person who's now using Markdown for that. Again, there's no one right way. And if it looks odd, the thing is that the things like the quick links almost date back to, what is it, 2000? I'm trying, February 2002 was Tinderbox's debut, and writing stuff for the web was very different then to what it is now. And broadly, most of the stuff still works. It's just what we're doing has got more complex, and there are all sorts of other affordances have arrived in the tool. And with a mind, knowing that you're doing some blogging stuff, I suspect you will get more mileage out of using the include notation and templates than you probably will spending time manufacturing.
No, absolutely. And the challenge that, again, to really emphasize it, the power of the include is the ability to create templates, right? So in this condition, apply that template. In this condition, apply this template. In this condition, apply that template. So you effectively can be referencing the same note and changing how the information of that note is displayed depending on which template you choose to assign to it. The other thing, Dave, I would, if I were you, I would, based on your statement, a couple things come to mind. You could create a Boolean checkbox that says include cartoon. So on that particular blog post, if you had an include cartoon, and I can show you in the includes if you're interested, it says if you basically say is if include cartoon equals true, then include the cartoon. Otherwise the recursive include would ignore it. And that's how I've managed all of my templates is using that methodology. Then the other thing you could do is in that particular, and this is how you could get a bit more fancy with it. And if we want, we could spend a few minutes playing with that right now. But I would, if I were to standardize this, I would use the include cartoon Boolean. And then in the template of for the cartoon figure, I would have action code that would then go randomly grab a picture, for example. So I could say randomly go grab this file names, one of the notes from the cartoons folder, and then stick that one there if you wanted it to be random. So that that's that and we could mock that up pretty quickly here if the rest of the group would want to experiment with that. And interestingly enough, an include question popped up on the forum this morning. So it's kind of serendipitous that we started talking about this in this way.
Well, I certainly wouldn't object to it. And again, I don't think it needs to be as sophisticated as picking a random one. I mean, you would just have a folder of assets of small, like thumbnail size images that in your mind which one is appropriate to that.
Yeah.
pose.
So let's play with it and see what we can do. Right. So let's say we've got an article, we'll call it blog post. Mm-hmm. And we've got another folder, we'll call resources folder. Mm-hmm. And we've got another folder we'll call cartoons. And I like outline view, we'll do this, and cartoons go in there. And let's call this one figure 1. Figure 2, figure 3, and let me go randomly grab some. And while we're at it, we'll just really quick drop in a prototype. We'll call it media file, P media, and P media will have a media file name. So we've got that, And to make it easy, we will not do any of the other fancy stuff. So that's a string. And so these are all going to be media files. And to make it fun, we'll go like that. And where's like a little picture?
They're all little pictures.
Media file. Okay. So there is our cartoons folder on our hard drive. And we'll go like that, just to make it pretty. Okay. And this one's folder 2. Okay, so we've got a resources folder with 3 cartoon images in it. And we've got our blog post up here. Now let me go off to my, assuming my Finder doesn't get messy again. Let me go grab 3 random images. Media. Right, so let's say, so here on my, I'm just gonna randomly grab 3 random images from my hard drive. So I'm gonna grab the whole path. So you see that, so this will be image 1. And I will grab image 2. Grab image 3. Now you could also do this with URLs for the images as well, but let's go.
Well, I'm actually thinking, I wonder, and not necessarily for your demo, but Tinderbox now will accommodate images in the note text. So for these small, like postage stamp thumbnail images, you could just put the note or put the image in the text of the note.
You could,
and then I have to see how it exports, and then
you could do that, right? So there's the image in the note.
Yeah.
My and here's my as Mark Anderson so often says, there are no wrong issue. There's nothing wrong doing that, and Mark Bernstein would be would want to kick me if I were to like say anything otherwise. My issue with that though is you've now just locked that asset, that knowledge piece, into that note. And it becomes very difficult to now use that knowledge piece anywhere else, right? Now, in theory,
no, because when it's exported, it exists on the server.
You're not understanding me. So let's say this is your blog piece, right? So let's
no. I'm talking. You're misunderstanding me. This is a resource. This is the I'm 100% with you right up here on your cartoons. These are the little pieces that I would include as a little image in a post. And instead of pointing to the links on my hard drive where they're at, or even I guess I could point to them on the server, I would just put them right in the note text. And then when they're exported, I got to see what Tinderbox does when it exports those images. Where it puts them in the directory hierarchy, because I would have to configure it the site.
Well, in this context, if you were to export this note in this context, it would put that image along in the line in the path with that note. As opposed to if you were in a blog and you had an images directory on your blog where all your
I know, I understand that. So the Tinderbox will export that whole folder and all its contents to HTML, and I will upload it to the server. Okay, so I just need to understand where in the file structure, how Tinderbox handles images and notes. Does each one? I haven't played with images and notes since Tinderbox 1.0 or whatever, back when we could do images before the whole thing blew up. But so yeah, go ahead though. I mean, I follow what you're doing.
Okay, so let's leave this one as this blog, and we'll go blog 2. Okay, so let's say we've got some text here. All right, so got some text here. I've got my notes. Here are my images. And now I want to go ahead and let's create a template. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add in a template, and we're going to say T Media is going to be my template. And what I want to do with T Media is I want to say image source equals quote value media file name. And then I want to say, quote that and then say width equals, and let's just hard code it for now, but you could easily, and like that. So you could easily pass the width as an attribute value to this as well. That's not a problem. So, and then let's call this our include file. And let me go back up here on our blog post. We'll create another one, is cartoon. So I'm now going to create an attribute called is cartoon, and I'm going to make it a Boolean. So now I have an attribute called is cartoon. And now what I want to do, and for now, because we're going to play the game of hard coding, and then we'll randomize in a minute if we have time. You'll see down here in our HTML note, give me some space in here, and just for my own notification, get some balance there. So now what we want to do is we want to say if, and we'll put an if in our, we'll say if is cartoon equals true, then we'll say include, and let's hard code it for, and actually, no, let's not hard code it. Let me do this. We'll say media.
And let me quickly ask for my on evaluating a conditional on true. Do you have to? I mean, just say if is cartoon and then do the
Yeah,
action.
you can do. Yeah. I mean, is cartoon basically is the same as saying is cartoon equals true. In other words, does it have a non-default value? But sometimes it's sometimes it's helpful, especially in an example, to do it because then it's explicit.
Right.
Because otherwise you end up saying, I should explain that when I say is cartoon, what I'm actually doing is, so sometimes you're sort of, what the heck? But certainly for your own usage, yeah, absolutely. And there are notes, certainly in ATV Ref, that allow you to get to the bottom of what a simple bare, statement of we're testing an attribute name means, depending on the different data types.
Okay. So what, and just so for those that are listening, if I go back here, what Dave is referring to is $ is cartoon. If I just say that, the presumption is the argument being asked for is this true? Does this exist? But I find it just to be, because I often will just forget, this statement is the same as that one. So just saying true or false.
It's also, I answered in Fidel's post in the forum just today, because he'd actually written sort of $ some attribute name equals false with a capital F. And in sort of gently correcting it, it said the double equals things Tinderbox normally gets right, but you can get caught out. If, for instance, you put something like equals open quotes, capital F, false, close quotes, you might find that evaluates as true because you've actually asked a Boolean question and what you gave it was a value. So it says, yes, it's true. And you thought you were saying false. So it also helps to, in that respect.
So if you do that, then is capital equals false.
Yeah. Especially if you'd unintentionally say put quotes around the false, because you've basically say anyway. But let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Well, you could also put the exclamation point before the $ and negate the whole thing.
No, if you wanted to, sorry, yes, yes, as a bet, yes, I apologize. Yes, by putting exclamation is cartoon, you're saying is cartoon equals false. Yes.
Okay, I think this is going to work. If it doesn't, we'll fix it. But basically what I'm saying is when I run this template HTML page, I want to say if cartoon equals true, then I want to include the value of the file name that we have in media file name, and I want you to apply the template T media to that file. So what I did here while you guys were talking, I went ahead and created an attribute that says, I didn't make that a set, so let me make this a set. Media file name should be set. Okay, now that will work. Great. So then if I go up here, all right, and I've got to figure out why I have those paths. I don't remember why. All right, well, we'll figure it out. So if we now go ahead and say, I'm going to now include, okay, well, there's two ways we did it. So here I embedded this include in the note itself. In the context of this particular note, I'm actually going to do it here for this demo. So now basically I'm saying, if cartoon equals true, I want you to include figure 1. And I want you to apply the template, and then I want you to end the if. I know I have no idea if this is actually going to work, but we'll see. I'm going to now apply the HTML template. There we go.
And you, so that also could have been the do macro we were looking at earlier, but I think you can probably see that rather, you know, by passing it off into a template, apart from the else, you're putting into these days into a larger space you can edit in. And
see what I'm doing here
in a monospace font, and the chances of you messing up because you've got too many spaces or not enough in the right place is lessened.
Now here's the really cool
So
thing. You see what I did
so
here?
go-
I selected more than one.
Well, that's the question I have is that so I'm writing a post. I have a Boolean is cartoon. I check it to include one. What is the other attribute I have to tell it to include Mo or dead tree or whatever? Where the figure 1, figure 2, figure 3.
So what I did is these are the names of these notes. So let's say this is Mo. This is May. Okay, this is Maze. This is tree. And I have no idea what the third one is. Let's see. So hopefully it's not something terrible that I just pulled off Turkey. Okay. Yeah, you never know what I have on my computer. Let's see. Turkey. All right. So we've got those 3 notes. Now I'm going to go ahead and erase all of those. And I don't know why. This should be a set. I got to remember which notes are getting all of that. We'll figure it out in a second, but I want to.
Are they in the suggested values or something? That's the other place.
Yeah, I want to know where those. I want to know where those are coming from. So actually, let's just do it right now. So if we go like media file name, we go to the attribute browser, and you quickly type in media file name. Right, we can see. Oh, I know why they're coming in. Of course.
Yeah, because you for the quick test purposes, you reuse the file name. Yeah,
I reused a file name. All right, so let's change that. So what I want to do here, see, that's the funny thing about logic here. So if I do this, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a new attribute called media. I'll call it
cartoon.
All right, so we'll call this name cartoon. That's going to be a set. And now we're going to go back and change my action code that I ran here to produce this. No name's fine. Oh, this is what I want to do. So I want to be populating name cartoon here. And then I want to be saying, I want you to populate. Okay, this actually gets interesting. If I do this, what I now want to say is I want you to get grab, include the note name cartoon. Just a minute, include name cartoon. Yeah.
You want value cartoon name, name cartoon, and you want to in the displayed attributes. You want to set a.
Yeah, I know, but I was thinking about what was happening with the template, but that's going to work. Just name cartoon. Okay, so that's the name of our cartoon. We don't actually need this anymore on that one. And so if I go like this, you'll see I've got maize turkey free. All right. So there's like a tree. So there's my tree. You did it right. Okay, so I got a tree. And now what's really cool with the include is if you've selected multiple notes, the include will actually include them. That's actually something I just learned today. I didn't know that before. So I can actually be including multiple notes like this. Or if I just wanted the turkey, I go like that.
Yeah, the reason that happened,
Weird.
gosh, I know the genesis of that was Ted Gorenson's amazingly complex blog thing we made for him back in version 5. But because it used to be include, we get one thing, but include can either go for one item or a group of items. So it might say, you know, include all my child notes or something, and process them using this template.
Now here's something else that's kind of interesting. So let's say I go up here and I am in my HTML template, and let's say in my template I want to include, you know, this up here, and let's say I want to now this. Let's see if I can grab it real quick. Grab this because we're blogging. I'll want to show you the real thing. Got to log into my blog here. So if I log into my blog. So the other thing you can do when you're doing stuff like this is kind of fun. Come on. Look at my media. You can also there you go. So here's my blog, and let's say I'm going to grab that picture from the blog. So I can go ahead and copy the blog, the URL from the blog, and let's say within this particular template, I don't actually. So I'm going to leave it there for now, but I'm also going to say, let's say if I was up here and I wanted to do this, say image source, we want to turn off the quotes. Okay. So image quote equals like this.
You didn't turn them off.
You're right. That. So that way, I'm also, did I not do it right? Source, got to spell source correctly. There you go. You'll see that, what did I do wrong? Oh, and that's not working because this has become a
no. It's I think is it the quotes? Oh, you've got a link in a link.
Link, yeah. It's you got to turn off smart links. This always gets me, and then I got to delete that. Why does it do that? I don't know why it doesn't. So sometimes smart links doesn't want to shut itself off.
Just yeah, copy the link and then paste the match style, and that'll route around it.
Just did. Here. That's so weird. It's not letting me paste this text. Huh. I ran into this the other day. I'm not sure what it was. All right, but my point. Oh, there you go. That was good. There we go. So you can pull images right from the blog that way too. So and the issue is if and the nice thing about this is if I wanted to do this, I could actually put this as a hard code into the template.
Right. And that's, I think, ultimately what the thing would be is that the images would exist in the Tinderbox file just for the sake of being the canonical file. Once they're uploaded onto the server, that when I export, all it ever exports is the link to the image already on the server. It doesn't.
Right. And so what you would do is, you know, the file name.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know that this is your server path to your images,
mm-hmm.
you would make that, that server path an attribute.
Mm-hmm.
So then you would basically say something of the nature like this. This is the way I do all my file management. I say media path, and then I'll say value media.
Or cartoon in this case, but yeah.
Or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what that's going to
Yeah.
do is that's going to string your media path plus the file name, and typically what you would do is you do that, right?
Yeah.
So that
And it doesn't matter if you want to do one value statement and do the sort of stringification just in the action code. It's 6 and 2 3s. You're going to get the same output either way.
So you go like, here's your image, here's my cartoon, and then you can use CSS to border it and do all of those cool things. But this is wickedly effective. And let me just show you a live what use of doing this. I did a ton of this week. So I'm putting together an event, and so like here's a bunch of details I have about the event. And if I go to my event landing page or my event overview copy, and this is not as elegant as it could or should be, but I was hacking it together pretty quickly. I was pulling in all of those kind of standardized event values into the note. And so now with this note, I'm like, if I ever want to be promoting the event, all of these information is coming up from the notes parent. And then these are the details that are buried into the event overview. So that way, when I'm following up with somebody, let me think about, like I was talking to Cole, prospects, email, okay. Gotta see where I find it. No, wasn't there. Okay, maybe communications. No, where did I do it? Let me pull this off to the side and just show you where I found it. Where was I doing that? General comms, maybe it was. I do the Cole email. Let me find it. Yeah, well, here's an example. Like, hey Mark, I hope you're doing well. Include the figure of the media. And so you'll see I'm actually doing that. And then that way too, if I want to include the event in a particular note, all I have to do is do that include. And now in my email responses to everyone, I can just easily always have that standard event overview in the response emails to everybody. And it's super, super effective.
Another thing that's quite useful is with images. If classic thing is if you're doing something, a blog or something, you might have some kind of an ident, logo or something at the top, and you might think, well, all I need to do is to point to the logo, and then you've found that actually you've changed the size of the logo image, and you actually wanted to put something underneath it. So if you make the HTML that is the sort of, even if you just stick a div around it to give it something to get hold of, if you define that sort of block of the HTML that you'll use on every page as an include, it can be much easier because you might have 6 or 7 different templates, page styles across your site, but you only need to change it once. So it's this thing of just reducing it down. How many times do I need to redo this? Once, because actually they all pull in from the same thing. And even within that, you could have further conditionals saying, well, if I'm this sort of a page, I'm going to do it slightly differently. But again, you've put that logic in a place where you'd expect to go look to find it. So again, you can go as deep down as you want.
All right, so let's do this now. Let's play with this.
While you're doing that, quickly thinking the other application I think is templates for the includes, and templates are block quotes. I use the tab thing, and it sometimes has unintended consequences. So
yeah, block quotes are great, and using CSS and all that's really nice. All right, so now I've got this random child element developed. So now if I go here, I can say and this is the way we'll do it. I'll go like this. I think I can do it this way. I'm going to say, get me the, what did I call it? I called it rand cartoon. So I'm going to say, get me the value of rand cartoon from
cartoons. Resources. Did you do in resources folder or cartoons?
I put in quotes. So now if I do that, we're going to get a random cartoon that's going to pop in, whenever that gets updated. So that was turkey right now. And so let's review it. So now it's tree. So now if we do that, we should get a tree. Did I not do it right? Oh, that turkey was coming from, okay, that's right. That extra turkey was coming from this line of here. So if we do that, so now we're getting maize. I guess now, and then if we do it, refresh it again, now we're going to get another turkey. So that would be a way of doing, playing with having that blog just be random, that image would be randomly generated.
Actually, that's a good point there that I tripped over actually when I was testing that other thing earlier with random is if you want to test random stuff, it's a good idea to use more than 2 or 3 items. Because the nature of randomness is it may keep coming up heads every time and you're wondering if your code's wrong. It's just that problem.
And actually, and now that and based on what Mark and I were just talking about earlier, this could actually be a nice way of doing it too. So let's say we do ran cartoon, because what I don't necessarily want is I don't want that cartoon, let's say I'm trying to publish the blog and I want that I only want that to be randomly generated once, and then I want it there forever persistently used, right? Because I don't necessarily want it changed. So what I would do with that is, and this is you would build this in the template, but I'll do it right here for now. I would say action, and I would say rand cartoon equals and then how do you do it, Mark? If rand cartoon,
you want to pipe equals, set it once and once.
That's right. We were just talking about that. This is why I wanted to reinforce my thinking. So if you say pipe equals, so if rand cartoon on this note is empty, that's what this is saying. If there is no value there, then I want you to get rand cartoon from the, let me just get, because I don't want to misspell it here, from the cartoons folder. Is that right? So
yeah.
So basically what I'm saying now is when I go to and actually probably best to not do that there. It'd probably be best to, I always put my action code on the top of the note. So essentially what I'm saying is when you trigger this template, if rand cartoon is empty, I want you to grab the rand cartoon from the cartoons folder. This is being generated by the action code we've put right here. So now when I go render that template, I'm going to get, if I've done, and then we've got a place, where am I putting it? Oh, and then here I've got the card, and let's say I don't want that. Yeah, is card, and let's put it on the top of the notes just so we make sure that we're seeing the right thing. So it should be the random cartoons right here.
One of the things to bear in mind with just flipping in and out of preview is that preview is intended to be triggered by changes to the note. If all you've done, for instance, is changed some attribute value or a template, you may not see an update.
You may not see it.
Right? There is no way, and I don't think at the moment there is a way you can prod the preview.
The way
the best thing is to make a small edit to the text just to trigger it.
Just make small edit text, right? So if you'll see here, and then so what I've done is I've said, and let's delete, let's make that empty again. So I said, random cartoon. If the random cartoon equals, if cartoon equals true, then I want you to go grab the random cartoon from that note, and there's the random cartoon, and say, and that's just got populated with maize. If we go back here and see now the random cartoon is tree. Why wasn't that tree? Oh, because it probably went back to maize.
Oh, because you said it's not you remember you used that.
Right. No, but I deleted it, and to your point of speed, it went back to maize in between me changing it and not. So that's how you would do the randomness method, and you can play with it.
Yeah, and Dave, if you want something that's got a lot of includes, just to sort of see how gnarly it gets, if you download the ATBRF TBX and just look at the templates, the main page one. I mean, not so much to understand it all, but just to sort of get a thing. Oh, right. So that's how it all goes together. Yes, I can make this an include. I can make that an include. And then by following through what the includes you use, you'll see how the whole thing pieces together.
So you'll see in all of my templates, I've got this. If the child list equals true, then give me the bulleted list. If the media, if prototype equals P media, then I want you to actually, use the media template, not the other template.
Right.
If index is true.
So this inspires a number of considerations when you're designing your blog, your website. You'll have a number of different pages, your about page, your archive page, maybe some other page. And if so an attribute of what type of page it is. So on your main page, you maybe want a random something to appear. Whether I was thinking a Tinderbox file full of quotations, you could have a random quote appear. Right. With every day's post, but you don't want that appear on the about page. Now, I don't export those files. Once I update them and export them, I click the do not export HTML don't export attribute so that we're not constantly uploading bits that don't need to fly. Yeah. But
and I think I noting sort of Michael showed one of his pages with lots of sort of different sorts of includes in there. I think he'd attest to the fact that don't feel the need to do something that complex right out of the box.
No,
get to the point of thinking, when you think, oh no, now I've got to change 5 templates. Right. Well, if I just take that bit out and put it in one place, and it's probably. In the ideal world, I mean, if you've done it lots of times, you'll know from the get-go, but I wouldn't overload the problem by thinking, well, I've got it all right. I'd let it be fairly organic. And it's fairly easy because normally what happens is you take the same piece or the equivalent piece out of a number of templates, put it into a different template, and then where that code was in the bigger templates, you just have an include statement. So in terms of refactoring, it's not overly complex. You just have to be careful that you don't drop anything on the floor as you do the edits.
What I want to, the value of this is if you're a blogger, and most of you probably aren't, is that part of the reward of blogging is to make your posts kind of entertaining to at least yourself. And one of the things that has been more challenging in the past, and it's probably easier now, is including graphics in a Tinderbox export. Now, I've got photographs automated where I can do a photo post, and that's very specific. But to put an amusing little diversion or something in there has a lot of overhead. And so the way I understand it now, with this includes and creating a template, makes it very facile to put a Mo or a camel soup can or whatever, a picture of a burning earth. Whatever else, groundhog into your post. It makes it a little bit more fun. Maybe not for the reader, but certainly for.
Well, also you can hearing you say that, you could think of badges as an analogy. So you could effectively set yourself up with a set that if I say use this value, make the included image this image. So that you could do that with a lookup file, or basically if you've got a dictionary type object. So you have effectively the idea, the concept you want to show, and a value, which is the file name for that. And then using the method Michael showed, so all the path is abstracted elsewhere, and looking up, so it checks for the idea that you want to show, and it goes and puts a file thing in for you. That's all magic. And all you've got to do, going back to your point in the blogging, so you're not out of the flow. So right, okay, I'm making a witty point here. I'm going to have my witty idea icon down, done.
And you'll see here, when you export the notes, Tinderbox is going to export out the images in the same directory as the posts. And that's where, if you have a complex structure on your blog site, you might want to do stuff, do different path methods to make sure that things are in the right place.
So this is why, in ATBRef, I use a root level images folder, and I've just set everything up that it does all the stuff we've been doing, but it just says, don't immerse yourself in the problem of trying to put all the files into the document. So you have sufficient metadata in the document to tell you what it is. And you can always make it, if you use Michael's method of having a proxy note per image, then you can always make it so that the template is set. You'd have a template for that sort of note that when you preview it, it shows you the image. So in other words, if you can't remember what the image is, you can easily find it. Or you could even just put a file type link on it, just so it shows it in preview, because you're not going to need to do it that often. But otherwise, all your images live in basically a known folder, and you don't have to worry about where Tinderbox is exporting them to, what the naming is and everything.
Well, again, for a blog, so there's boilerplate that is universal, regardless of the date or the archive. That's where the cartoons or they would live at the root level. But for your blog, in my case, you can do it wherever you want. There's an images file for each year. Because I had one images file for my whole blog from 2013 to 2019, thought I had all those images on my hard drive, did something with the server, lost them all, couldn't reconstruct them. So no, each year gets its own images file with the file name, so I know exactly what they are and where they came from. And yeah, hard experience.
Dave, someone's asking, could you drop a URL for Nice Marmot in the chat?
Dave, this may be a moot point. It's Bruce. But we had a situation where a WordPress blog went down completely, and we used the Wayback Machine, and we were able to recover, not 100%, but pretty close. And then I used SiteSucker to to download the web. So I don't know if something like that, or
no, it didn't escape me to try that. And Internet Archive is not as diligent about scraping sites as it once was. So certainly not for images anyway.
It might be. I'm not well versed in the innards of WordPress, but I suspect you can possibly have WordPress effectively pull images from an images folder. So I mean, because for instance, I do ATB ref really old style, basically because it's what I was doing 20 years ago, or nigh on that. And so basically I run the whole thing out locally and then upload it. So I basically sync it onto the server. Now you can't do that in WordPress because basically the website lives in the database on the server. But what you could do is you could have it using images from an images folder, and you could make sure that you had the images that you used. You had your process made sure that you had a folder at your end that has the images that are going to be either synced to or uploaded to the images folder in your website. So if the server goes fat on you, things that might be hard to get back, like those images, you've basically got a local copy as last used. There's no right answer in all this, because pick another blogging tool, it'll be slightly different, but the broad premise holds. Oh, and quick, I'll just say, for those of us who are tuning in from the right bank of the Atlantic, we're all on the same time zone from next weekend. Well, ours changes, I think, Saturday night. So actually we'll still be 1 hour out for next. No, actually it'll be Sunday. So we'll all be on the same spec.
Perfect. All right, everybody, we're a few minutes over. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.